Hello. Hello, everyone. So our four panelists today are Faith Taylor, the President and Global Sector of Automobility at DHL, Andrew Cornelia, CEO of Mercedes-Benz, High Power Charging, Jerome van Tilburg, CEO of IONITY, and Thijs Meling, Head of NIO Business NIO. Welcome, everyone. So I want to start on our first question is, from your perspective, how does the UK rank as a market for electric vehicles, and what does it have to do to improve its standing? For the panel.
Okay, so I believe that the UK starts to be at an inflection point in terms of electric vehicles. It was at a certain point lagging behind, but the last couple of years we see an acceleration of the acceptance of EVs. Also, in terms of fleet, we see much more EVs, in the fleet, and we tend to see an improvement in terms of infrastructures for the EVs. The only point is maybe there are not enough incentives from the different authorities really to further accelerate that. But still, we see the important thing is that in terms of acceptance, there is definitely an improvement.
Yeah, happy to provide my perspective. UK is doing really well, and I think the outlook is very promising. We've seen this success in other markets in Europe where government support has really helped the adoption of EVs. And with the new ZEV mandate here in the UK, the government is on the right track. Giving incentives to car manufacturers, investing in incentives for consumers to buy vehicles, like my understanding recently, like a 1.4 billion commitment, and investing in charging infrastructure with another 200 million. So UK is becoming really like a critical market and successful. It's through the three automotive markets in Europe, Germany, France, UK. UK is now outpacing Germany. 180,000 vehicles, EVs sold year to date, which is very promising. So, we're very much looking forward to the success in the UK.
Andrew.
Well, for us, we don't offer vehicles or NIO vehicles yet in the UK, purely for the reason that the steering wheel is unfortunately on the wrong side of the car for us. But what we do see is that this is an incredibly interesting market for us, fast growing, and for us it's more a timing thing. It's more an engineering a problem that we have to solve, or at least a complexity. But as soon as we have our vehicles available, this is an interesting market for us to enter into.
I think the panel has provided a lot of insight already, but the only additional thing I'll mention is interesting hearing Katie talk about the technology around the advancement of EVs and the industry around automotive. And I think that, from a first principles perspective, the product is in the market. We see it here in the UK, we see it globally, but we're not supporting that product. We're not supporting consumer choice. Infrastructure remains one of those areas that we need to continue to build out here in the UK and globally.
So, we often focus on the consumer side of the car market, but it's worth noting that we've got the huge logistical and infrastructure side of the market as well. So, Faithy, I wonder if you could speak a bit about how DHL is working to electrify its fleet and the challenges it's facing.
So, the interesting thing is that as of 2007, we had sustainability targets. Now, in order to reach these sustainability targets, we needed to do things, and one of them was electrifying our fleet. We have a fleet of around 150,000 vehicles. So initially, we did not find the right vehicles, the right vans. So we started to develop our own vans together with an institution in Germany, and we had up to 20,000 electric vans around 2020, our own vans, because there was no single OEM who would have the vans that were meeting our targets. Remember that we had this target of net zero emission by 2030, and you need to do something about that. But then we started then to see more solutions in terms of the vehicles for us. So I have to say that now, for the first and last mile, you know, we are fine in terms of what's available in terms of vans. Then came the problem of the charging. But for the first and last mile, I would say that we have little problems because we have depot charging, right, for our 40,000 EVs in our fleet. The issue that we face is more for the long haul, you know, trucks, where first there is no availability of these trucks. You know, the range could be around 200, maybe 300 kilometers, and of course we need up to 600. But that's of course coming. So that's we have there a challenge, because also in terms of the speed of the charging, because for us these vehicles are an asset, and uptime is very important. And then you had all the issues related to the telematics and connectivity around, and information systems around, you know, the components of the vehicles that were not up to the standards we wanted. But now you can see what's going on here. We start really to have very viable solutions.
So that long-term, that long-distance charging infrastructure is still not there?
No, yeah, two things. You have the vehicles that are not yet available. They are upfront cost, but of course we look at the total cost for in the lifetime of vehicle for EVs, but still they are not yet there. And the charging on the way may not be available, and even if it's available, it's the speed of this charging that can be more problematic. And especially when you work across borders, that's even, and of course the cost of that charging.
Yeah.
You and I need to talk afterward,
absolutely.
like, you know, so,
Absolutely.
you know, happy to support you with that and make it more feasible for you.
Absolutely.
So I'll open this up to the rest of the panel. What do you think the other technologies, replaceable batteries and high-speed charging, where does that stand? How is that going to help this long-distance logistics market over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
You need to really repeat the question, right?
With technology changing in the EV space, such as high-speed charging and battery changing ability, how is that going to change the long-distance logistics space over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, you know, the technology is now here. Like what you mentioned, I think the vehicles are coming to market, whether it's like, you know, private vehicles or, you know, trucks that are like getting the range, getting the charging speeds that can actually make, you know, enable this transition. You know, this is, from an IONITY perspective, the moment that we've been waiting for, with, you know, finally 800-volt vehicles getting to market that can really benefit from increased charge speeds. And you know, this is one of the benefits that we've been having as IONITY, that from the early stage we've been founded by OEMs that have been able to articulate that vision. These vehicles are coming to market, the transition is happening, and we've all been concerned about range anxiety and it takes too long to charge your vehicle. That moment is now decreasing rapidly. 800 vehicles are coming to market. We have like a network that is 99% 800 volt as well. And that combination allows you to bring charging speeds down from 40 minutes on average to 20 minutes only. And that's a huge benefit that will further increase the adoption of EVs. You know, we've been too concerned, it takes too long, it's cumbersome, but all of us as CPOs and car manufacturers were all committed to make this fast, seamless, and easy.
I'll just chime in there because I think that's an important point that Jeroen brought up, which is, you know, the whole industry is pushing power higher, and we walk around this room and we see all the amazing product that's out there. We talk about 800 volt, we talk about 400 kilowatts, we talk about 1,000 kilowatt, but equally as important as dialing up the power is dialing down the inconvenience. And the panel before this time spoke about giving consumers time back in their day. And that has been one of the fundamental barriers that we're trying to overcome, which is how do we give people time back into their commute, time back into their road trip? How do we bring freedom of travel back to getting from point A to point B? So as much as power is important, it's really time, and it's that consumer experience of time, which is convenience.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and that's also why I don't believe in a single solution to this problem, right? So there is different use cases for different reasons and for different people. At NIO, we strongly believe in actually the whole methodology of swapping the battery, and that works perfectly in certain use cases when you just need to be on the road and need to be on the road fast again. But it's not the only solution. So for us, NIO cars can charge like normal cars and can swap. And for me, the solution really lies in the combination of this type of infrastructure. And for me, that's quite important.
So we spoke there about high voltage chargers and increasing the speed of charging. So Andrew, I was wondering if you could speak a bit about the infrastructure behind that and if there's infrastructure holding back the rollout of these chargers.
The short answer is yes. Again, go back to what I said before, first principles. The tailwind that we have in the marketplace is that the vehicles themselves are dramatically improving, right? 10 years ago, you think about what type of vehicles were on the road versus today, it's night and day difference in terms of the product that consumers have optionality around. If you ask the prospective EV driver, over half of them are likely to buy an EV as their next vehicle. The two challenges within our industry are, one, affordability, and we could have a whole panel discussion on that, and that's super interesting. But the second one is infrastructure availability. And today, we're not even meeting the needs of the vehicles on the road. So that's what Mercedes-Benz high-power charging is setting out to do. And we're well positioned to help solve some of these challenges as an OEM-backed CPO. We have 130 years of experience helping solve consumer challenges around transportation. We built the first vehicle, we built the first anti-lock brake system, first seatbelt, and now we're looking to build what we consider sort of an EV 2.0 charging experience, which is not just about the quality, but is also about the experiences around charging. So we need more charging, we need better quality charging, but also to this idea of time, we need to think about the experiences around charging themselves and put focus on that.
Do you think the lack of infrastructure in general, especially when it comes to energy and renewable energy, is damaging the consumer experience at all?
The answer is yes. Today, if you ask the consumer, there's a couple reasons, in terms of, why they're not buying a vehicle. And again, it comes down to infrastructure and really availability of infrastructure, quality infrastructure, price of fueling their EV vehicle. That is the reason why they're not buying an electric vehicle today. So being able to build to the cars on the road, being able to build towards the coming cars is critical for this.
And I'm not sure it's damaging though, because in the end, you don't see a lot of people that are switching to EV and switching back again, but it's prohibiting a lot of people to step into an EV. It really raises a barrier here.
From your position, do you see people more willing to adopt the battery switching technology?
Sorry?
Are you seeing more people willing to adopt battery switching when it's available?
Well, I would love to say yes to that, but there's still some work to be done also for us. We as a company, we strongly believe in battery swapping technology because it addresses some of the key pain points that users and consumers have. But it also requires, and I have to be fair, it also requires still quite a bit of education and understanding of how it works, and it requires a network that we're still developing. So we currently have 60 power swap stations in Europe. That is a good start, but definitely not enough for people to blindly adopt this technology. But the battery swap station and the whole ability to actually be able to swap a battery is not just related to a quick recharge. It's also related to not having the risk of ownership in this case, right? So if you can swap a battery, you don't have the risk of your battery degrading too much and you're stuck with a vehicle that can't charge too much anymore.
And actually, there's a cultural element to that. For example, the adoption of the swapping was easier in China, It can be also in Thailand for two-wheelers or whatever. So you have a cultural element to that, and that's maybe one of the breaks.
Jerome, one for you. IONITY's done a recent 600 million euro funding to improve infrastructure and improve value for the end user. How are you using that to approach these key challenges?
Well, we're continuing, 600 million, it's a lot in the industry. It's a record green loan facility that we've been able to secure, which is a strong token that, from banks that we're on the right track. And there is trust from banks in the transitioning happening, and the transition to EVs is real. We continue on our path. Originally on the mission of removing that primary concern about EV ownership. You cannot, take your EV on a long distance trip. You cannot visit your favorite holiday destination. That's the mission that we've been on over the past 7 years, plastering Europe, with a network that brings you everywhere. The 600 million enables us to, move into the next phase of EV adoption. A big strategy is moving into urban areas. There is enabling the EV mass adoption of people living in apartment buildings that cannot always rely on public charging, or make it fast and convenient for taxi drivers. Every minute counts, like in your business. So you need to top off your vehicle very quickly in an urban setting too. We're going to invest it in, to your point, the end-to-end customer journey needs to be perfect. It needs to be beyond just charging. Make it convenient so that ultimately physics will win and that people will embrace EVs as the best, way of mobility. And we keep investing in increasing speeds further. We talked about, the IONITY network is 350 kilowatt dedicated per outlet. Super relevant for 800 volt vehicles. Later this year, we will start installing and deploying our first 600 kilowatt chargers. So we're on this mission of keep building the network of the future, all with the mission of the transition to happen.
And then when we're talking about building out the infrastructure, we've got supply chain constraints that are dominating the industry. So how is each of the individual companies that you represent approaching these supply chain issues and dealing with them?
So, with EVs, you have many things that are happening in the cloud. However, you can not have a battery in the cloud. So, the battery is really the most complex logistics challenge that you have with EVs. So these batteries, you need to transport them. You may transport them in cells, but so transportation of these batteries is really something that can be challenged. There are regulations. You cannot fly them as such. You can go by boat. You may move them in cells in a plane, but still it's on the road. You have, of course, regulations. In terms of warehousing, you need to have condition monitoring also for these batteries. It can be in terms of temperature, in terms of humidity, and all these elements. You need also to have important compliance in terms of also potential risks. So you need particular systems like sprinklers or whatever. So, and then you have high-tech components on EVs, so that you need to treat in a different way. So, therefore, I would say it's complex. It requires training for the people. It requires all kinds of particular solutions, not only for the inbound, but also for the aftermarket, where we work then on shared warehouse, because a lot of corporations do not have enough batteries to store on their own. So, and we developed 15 centers of excellence all over the world. So it gives you an idea of you have the 80% that is not an issue, but this 20% that requires special attention for our own fleet, but also for our customers, because of course we are not only having an important fleet, but we are also offering services.
Yeah, so from a charge point operator perspective, I think supply chain issues, are likely different. It's more the complexity that applies to all of us that are deploying infrastructure. It's the same. It's the lack of proper grid connections that are holding us back. It's the tedious permitting processes. The UK is having the fun of way leaves, just getting your cables over the land. That is more like in the whole chain that is holding back, accelerating us to help us accelerate faster. Supply chain issues are more related to like, okay, we need to secure the proper hardware to install the transformers, etc. But the challenges start way before that. If there's anything that I can call upon the government, help us, to remove some of the administrative burden, get us the power, and then I'm pretty sure that all of us are ready to execute upon it.
I'll double click on what Jeroen said, especially from a supply chain perspective. Energy is what we're procuring the most of, and at least from the US perspective, interconnection right now is the biggest issue across all renewables, all power generation. I think the average interconnection timeline right now for an EV charging site is anywhere from 12 to 24 months. For CNI power, it's up to 6 years. So I mean, these are big challenges that we're trying to solve, and the only way to do it, and Jeroen mentioned this, is managing the stakeholders, which are local authorities that have jurisdiction, the government and the permitting process, utilities, which operate within their own structures. So interconnection, power availability, these are some of the challenges that we're facing.
And just something, there are sometimes interesting things that happen. We are sponsoring Formula E from 2014, and there are a lot of learnings for us in terms of regulation, whatever. But something interesting is that at the beginning, we were thinking, how should we move these batteries? What kind of packaging is needed? And we realized that it was much easier in terms of regulation, whatever, to move the battery in the vehicle. So then when you start to move your battery in the vehicle and you ship it, you have much less regulation than if you move the battery separately. So all kind of things that you learn by, of course, experience. Yeah.
I was just about to say exactly the same thing. So we found out, because our batteries and vehicles are separable, and we find out that it's actually much easier to just, when the battery needs to be transported, to put it in a vehicle and then transport the vehicle, because somehow then regulations are completely different. So it's also, regulations need to start following, the technology here.
So there'll be another one for the entire panel. What do you think needs to be the biggest either regulatory or political movement over the next 5 years to enable the industry to really truly meet its future potential?
Well, I think the things that are happening now, like it's the predictability of the government, like the ZEV mandate in the UK is on the right path. It gives us a northern star towards 2030, 2035. And that's the reliability, the credibility that we need, that we have a northern star that we can work towards. Like it gives everyone in the industry and the consumers the confidence that this is serious. And again, big kudos to the UK government, like giving that clarity. The other thing is what I mentioned earlier, like we're ready to execute. It's just that all of us need the grid capacity, the right fast lane procedures to build more infrastructure. And that is solving the chicken and the egg. There is still this concern about like, is there sufficient charging infrastructure? There is, but we need to keep ahead of the curve because that is the enabler to EV sales. And in order to achieve that, we just want to execute fast. We want to build more stations. We want to add more plugs. And again, all of us in the industry are ready. And this is where we need a bit of more air cover of the boroughs in London and the UK government.
I sit here with two hats on, as an OEM, as a manufacturer of vehicles, and as a company that builds charging points basically around Europe and around the globe. From an OEM perspective, the biggest issue we have in terms of regulations is that they change continuously. Subsidies change on vehicles, regulations change, and they differ per country in Europe. And that makes our life as a manufacturer, and that's the same, I guess, for your parent company, the same thing. That makes our life quite difficult. If you then go to the building of the charging facilities, I echo what Jeroen says. So we are ready to build further. It's the process of getting permits, the process of getting our power swap stations permitted and ready to build. That is actually the part that takes the longest and is the most cumbersome. So there we also urge to further improve the regulations.
So I'll give a U.S. perspective on this. There's some interesting things happening in D.C. these days in the U.S. And over the last couple of weeks, there have been some laws passed that have unraveled some of the gains that have happened over the last 4 to 8 years, namely around California's clean energy waiver, which set a different carbon emission standard for the ZEV states. 11 states followed, as well as some of the personal tax credits, the $7,500 tax credit, which incentivized passenger vehicles to buy electric vehicles. So I think BNEF came out with their updated forecast today. By 2040, it was going to be 43% of new cars sold in the U.S. were going to be EV. Now we're down to 27%. So again, these are sort of facts on the ground as we know them today, but I do want to provide a different perspective, which I think it's not about politics always, it's about people. So I was on a recent road trip across our network. We're building globally, but our network in North America is building out the fastest. We have about 400 charge ports. One of our first partners has been Buc-ee's, which if you haven't been to the US is a fuel retailer. The beaver is their logo. And I was charging at one of our stations as a mystery shopper, and I walked up to a Chevy Silverado EV, and I asked the gentleman who was there with his daughter what his experience was, and he had mentioned to me that it was his first time renting an EV. He was dropping his daughter off at college, and how he always had a preconditioned idea that EVs would not be a product that he could consume. He worked on an oil rig. He had a sort of, an oil jack company, and he had shared with me how he brought this vehicle out to the oil jack, drove his employees in the vehicle, and immediately they were converted. So what he said to me was, the product is great, and when you can have infrastructure like this that supports the product, the consumer is sold. So again, as much as there are things happening in the political system, both in the US as well as globally, I still go back to the fundamentals, which is if you have a great product and infrastructure that can support that product, these will sell.
Yeah, what I would say, what is important is to have continuity in the policies. That's the worst thing that happened in the world when you have constant changes. Supporting the research and development and the development of an ecosystem like this, because we see that you need different stakeholders to make that successful. Supporting research and development because we will have very important technology jumps, and there competition can fuel the market, and also communicating more around the benefits of electrification for the end user, but also for the fleet, but certainly for the end user. But once people have tested it, tried it, they love it. They just love it, right? And especially the younger generation. So, and then of course, but I think that naturally we see that we've reached this inflection point. So once you have more than 15% of the vehicles sold that are EVs, wherever something really changes, and for the long term.
So we've got 2 minutes left, and I just wanted to have a quick fire round from each one of you, just to ask, what do you think, from your respective positions, is the most exciting and innovative tech coming through the pipeline right now that's going to help the world move forward in this space over the next 10 years?
So from my perspective, with an EV, the battery is really a centerpiece. So the solid-state batteries could really be an important technology jump, because much more power, less weight, faster charging. That's something maybe that could be an important technology jump. And of course, there are other ones.
Exciting things are happening just in front of our eyes now. Like I'm fully convinced, similar to your story, once you drive an EV, you will realize that ultimately physics will win. It's an amazing experience. We're removing that other concern, like is charging fast enough? Charging speeds are already cut by half, 40 minutes nowadays, going to 20 minutes, soon to 10 minutes only. It's faster than you can grab a coffee. So it's happening now. The transition is happening super fast over the next couple of years. It doesn't take 10 years. This is just happening in the next 2-3 years.
So I think in the broader automotive industry, what Katie was talking about earlier is one of the most fascinating trend lines, which is the digitization and AI of the vehicle as a platform. And I say vehicle as a platform because that's what it's becoming. And at Mercedes, one of the things we talk about now with our current fleet of vehicles is pick your powertrain. The car will look and perform the same way, and you can pick a gas powertrain, hybrid powertrain, or electric powertrain underneath that. In the EV space, it's all about energy density and efficiency and the ability to get more energy out of your cell chemistry. Our new CLA is one of the most efficient vehicles on the road as it's launched. Within the charging infrastructure, I think the most interesting thing that's happening is we're solving, if you go back to kind of your macroeconomic days, I call it the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for charging. We're solving kind of the fundamentals, right? The quality, the reliability, the speed, and we're now working up that pyramid to kind of that self-actualized moment. And I think there it's all about consumer choice. So imagine a world where you can choose how fast you charge, whether you want it to match your movie theater experience or your home experience or your quick sort of on-the-go destination experience. It can be 10 minutes, it can be 40 minutes, it can be 2 hours, it can match to your favorite cup of coffee, it can match to whatever experience you want attached to it. Consumer choice is where EV charging will go.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. So it's the changing technology and battery, changing technology in charging, it changes so fast, and there's, as you say, the charging speed go up and up and up, and to a point where charging is really as simple as grabbing a cup of coffee, like we do already today with our power swaps. So I think there's a lot of excitement coming on that side. On the other side, if you look at the vehicle side, there is so much happening in autonomous driving that we don't see in Europe yet, and there is so much happening in China, and our cars and any car on the road can do so much more than what we see today. And I expect to see big jumps in the coming years that will really change the way we drive our cars. So that's, for me, probably the most exciting.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you all of you for this afternoon. It's been exciting. Thanks a lot.